G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Shane Shed. Today I'm going to be talking about what tools you'll require for most of your general DIY mechanical stuff. I'll break this down into probably a couple of areas. First off, we'll probably talk about the real basics you need. So when you're starting off, if you want to do basically your own engine oil and filter changes, when starting off, those will be the tools that you will require first. So we'll run through all the tools that I generally use. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff laid out here, but for the starters, if we're talking oil and filter changes, generally you'll need something to undo your filter with. Now, depending on your vehicle, you may be able to just get away with a simple filter strap that'll do the job, or some vehicles may have something a little bit more difficult to get to. You may need to order like a specific filter tool. It just depends on your vehicle. Obviously, getting your sump plugs off, I'd recommend if you're starting off, get a small 3/8 drive ratchet socket set. This will do for most of your vehicle stuff. Generally, these will go up to probably around 20 mil. I mean, you could just get either a metric or an imperial set, depending on what sort of vehicles you get as well. You don't need to limit yourself to 3/8 either. I mean, I've got a 1/2-inch drive. As well as your socket sets, I'd also recommend a decent quality torque wrench. Now, this is a reasonable size one. So this one will go down to 60 Newton meters all the way up to 300 Newton meters. So this is a pretty big one. I don't have anything under this. You could get a smaller one as well, but these are a relatively expensive item. So most of your work that you'll do that you require a torque wrench, basically a 1/2-inch drive one will do for, I'd say, 80% of what you need it for. Also worth getting as well, guys, as well as your sockets for undoing nuts and bolts. Definitely a set of open-end spanner, ring spanner combinations. So if I had to buy one set, I'd probably recommend the Ratcheting ring spanners. These are really handy for getting into a tight area. But sometimes that ring end can be a bit big for getting into certain tight areas, which is why just your standard ones I recommend as well, having a set. I would probably, depending on the vehicle you're working on, would dictate whether you get a metric or imperial set. So that would cover most of your general oil change requirements. Basically, those couple of items, and then the rest is kind of just more general tooling. So screwdrivers, I'd recommend just buying a set of screwdrivers. Just get a reasonable quality set, and then if you need anything that's outside of that set, just buy them as individual units. It's far easier. Clamps, now I recommend a G clamp and an F clamp. They can be helpful. I find them useful for holding. These are just great for holding on to things, clamping things down to a workbench. How I use these G clamps for doing brake pad changes when I push pistons back inside calipers. Multi grips, called multi grips because they can move up and down. This is something I'd recommend getting a decent pair. These are not, they do the job, but when you really need to clamp on, they flex and can jump on those little ridges, so it pays to get something decent of those. Circlip pliers, inside and outside ones, I'd definitely recommend getting, but again, this would probably depend on how in-depth you are getting with your jobs. Pliers, I recommended just the normal pliers. probably some needle nose pliers, and definitely the bent needle nose pliers do come in very handy for getting into the tight corners. Vise grips, again, these are quite handy for locking onto broken studs, all sorts of stuff, hanging on to things when you need quite a bit of force. Get a reasonable weight pair of those. Okay, yeah, Allen key sets. So you could probably get away with metric for most stuff nowadays. I've got metric and imperial. As you can see by the condition, the metrics get a lot more use nowadays. And while you're on sets like this, a lot of modern cars now run with these Torx bits. So I'd recommend getting a set of these as well. Often you'll find you'll need to give things a whack. So a hammer is definitely required. This one's got two soft faces, an aluminium and nylon. I've also got some heavier hammers as well. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the claw style hammers. Sometimes if you're in a tight spot, all this end gets in the way. Probably recommend an engineer's hammer or the ball peen hammer. They would be the way to go. Along with hammers, a drift of some sort, but this is just a brass drift, so it's obviously softer than the parent metal you're trying to hit. The only thing to keep an eye on with these is make sure you keep all the ends deburred, because those pieces of metal can chip off and fly into your eyes and all sorts. These are just your pin punches. They're good for just knocking things out, bearing cups, that sort of things where you can get in and punch something out of a hole where it needs to be. Pipe wrenches. These are quite handy for hanging onto round items. Again, broken off studs, that sort of stuff. Probably get them as you require, I think. Pry bars. Now you could get away with using screwdrivers, but these are basically generally are made for that job of prying something out. Yeah, you can buy these in sets or individually, however you like. Or some jobs you may need a bigger socket than you may have available in your set. If that's the case, I'd recommend just getting your set, and if you need a socket for a particular job, I'd recommend buying that individually. I've got certain jobs I do, like CB hub nuts and things like that. I've got this meter breaker bar. This is actually a 3/4 inch drive. Not much doesn't come undone with this. But again, that'd be, you'd buy these parts with matching sockets for a specific job. Okay. Now, if you want to do any electrical work, I recommend side cutters for cutting cable ties, that sort of thing. Highly recommended. Now these are crimping pliers. These are for your spade terminals, that sort of stuff. I'd highly recommend getting decent quality ratcheting crimpers rather than the little cheap blade ones. These just do a much nicer job. These are again more crimping pliers, but these are for your open barrel type fittings. So they're just a different design. Again, probably get these as you need for specific tasks. Wire strippers, kind of handy. These come in all different shapes and sizes. You can just use your side cutters for stripping wire, but these just make it a bit easier. And I'd also recommend a multimeter. Now, you don't have to get an expensive multimeter like these. A $20 jobby will do the same. Test light. These are invaluable for finding electrical faults. You just basically, once you complete a circuit, the light lights up in there. So these are great for finding live terminals and stuff if you need it for when ignition's on, that sort of stuff. And these are dirt cheap as well, so there's not really any reason for not having one. Another item that I highly recommend, OBD2. fault code reader. This is really, I think, it's a part of the toolkit now for basically any modern vehicle. You need to be able to read and clear your fault codes. If you own a Land Rover, we're extremely fortunate, and there's a couple of really good options available to us. So grab one of these. There's a whole different variety of units available. Battery charger. Definitely should have a battery charger of some description. I think it's worthwhile having, guys, is some good quality car stands. If you're going to be jacking up vehicles, you definitely need to have some car stands to sit your chassis on. And we were talking before about car stands. Well, before you need car stands, you obviously need jacks to get it up off the ground. So that's definitely something to add to the wish list. Car ramps. So these are very handy for if you've got a lower car, for driving it up, getting it up off the deck so you can crawl under it. Great for your general oil, engine oil changes, that sort of thing. Hey guys, so that's probably my run through of the basics you need. As you progress with working on more and more things, you'll find yourself needing more and more tools. I'd recommend just tooling up for the jobs that you require as you go. It's definitely the most economical way to do it. You don't have to spend a fortune on like the top level, like snap-on grade tools. For the average person, you just don't need that sort of quality. I would recommend, getting reasonable quality stuff, but I'd probably avoid generally most of the cheap, nasty stuff. The mid-range stuff is quite acceptable for what the average person will need. But I hope this gives you a starting point. If you've got any further comments or questions, throw them up in the comment section below. And if you enjoy my style of videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next one. Cheers, guys.